Never before have we seen an African government stand toe-to-toe with a powerful Western company. For decades, the story has been the same. African governments left powerless, while Western corporations, with the backing of their home governments and Western-led institutions, moved freely across the continent, extracting wealth and calling the shots. But in the Sahel, that old narrative is starting to crack. Because now, it's not the African government feeling powerless. It's the Western company. Recently, something extraordinary happened in Mali. The authorities there sent a military helicopter roaring toward a gold mining site operated by Barrick Gold, a Canadian giant that's been mining in Mali since 2015. When the helicopter touched down, soldiers moved swiftly. They airlifted $117 million worth of gold out of the site. And Barrick Gold? They could do absolutely nothing to stop it. So the question is, why did the Malian authorities take such a bold step? What pushed them to confront a Western heavyweight in such dramatic fashion? Just a few days ago, something extraordinary unfolded in Mali. A military helicopter painted in brown and green camouflage made an unexpected landing at Barrick Gold Corporation's mine. It touched down on the tree-lined airstrip of the Loulo-Gounkoto gold mine, catching everyone off guard. From the helicopter stepped officials from the Malian government. They were quickly escorted by the mine's security team to the processing plant, straight to the place known as the Gold Room. But these officials weren't there for a routine inspection. They were there for the gold. According to reports, about 5 hours after landing, the helicopter took off again, carrying with it gold bullion worth a staggering $117 million. After the incident, Barrick Gold released a statement confirming what had happened. They said the helicopters had landed unannounced and seized over 1 metric ton of gold, roughly 2,204 pounds. The company admitted the situation was fluid and the ultimate intent behind the action remained unclear. But there's more to the story. Just last month, a Malian court appointed a provisional administrator to restart operations at the country's largest gold mining site. For nearly 6 months, Barrick Gold had suspended activities there. The provisional administrator, Soumana Makaji, who once served as Mali's health minister, announced his plans to fund the mine's revival by selling gold directly, and that's why the helicopter came. The $117 million worth of gold wasn't just a random seizure, it was a desperate move to generate cash and breathe life back into Mali's gold operations, independent of foreign control. For the first time in a long time, it was an African government, not a Western company, calling the shots. However, Barrick Gold isn't staying silent. In a statement, the company declared that any plan by Mali's provisional administrator to restart operations or sell gold from the site would be not only illegitimate, but also ill-advised. But no matter what Barrick Gold says, the writing is on the wall. The gold will be sold. The bigger question is why? Why this sudden clash between Barrick Gold and Mali's military authorities? Why did Barrick Gold decide to suspend operations at the Loulo-Gounkoto mine in the first place? And what exactly does Mali hope to achieve by taking matters into its own hands? To understand this standoff, we have to go back to 2023. Mali, like its neighbor Burkina Faso, stands among Africa's top gold producers. But its wealth goes far beyond gold. Beneath Malian soil lies an untapped treasure of manganese and lithium, minerals crucial for the world's transition to clean energy. Yet these resources remain largely unexplored. Gold, however, has long been the lifeblood of Mali's economy. According to the country's former mines minister, gold accounts for a massive 25% of Mali's national budget, 75% of its export earnings, and around 10% of its entire GDP. That statistic alone tells you just how vital this single resource is for Mali's survival and future. Yet, like so many African countries, Mali's mining sector has been dominated for decades by foreign players. Western mining giants have ruled the industry since independence. Canadian firms like Barrick Gold and B2Gold, Australia's Resolute Mining, and Britain's Hummingbird Resources. For years, they've extracted wealth from Mali's soil, leaving many Malians wondering how much of that gold truly stays in the country, and how much flows quietly out to foreign bank accounts. Now, with a new government in charge and growing calls for sovereignty, Mali appears determined to rewrite that script. For Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali's transitional president, achieving true independence for his country isn't just about politics, it's about economic sovereignty. And in Mali, that starts with taking back control of its gold. So, in August 2023, Colonel Goita made a bold move. He signed a brand new mining code into law, a law that all foreign mining companies operating in Mali are now required to follow. But before drafting this new code, Goita launched an audit into Mali's gold mining sector. What he discovered was nothing short of shocking. The audit revealed that every year, Mali was losing between $500 million and $1 billion in mining revenues. Imagine what that kind of money could do for Mali's economy. Schools, hospitals, roads, jobs, a future. It's no wonder Goita decided something had to change. Under the new mining code, the Malian government can now take up to a 35% stake in all new mineral projects. It also allows the state to collect higher revenues from the gold industry, a sector that has long been dominated by foreign interests. But that's where the trouble began. Barrick Gold has flatly refused to accept the new rules. The company argues that the Loulo-Gounkoto mines should remain under the old mining code, the one in force when their operations first began. Under that old code, Barrick Gold was allowed to own 80% of the Loulo-Gounkoto mine, while Mali was restricted to a maximum stake of just 20%. Even more troubling, the old code exempted Barrick from paying taxes while the mines were operating. For Mali's new leadership, this arrangement is unacceptable. But for Barrick Gold, the stakes are enormous. And so, the standoff continues, a clash between an African nation determined to claim its own wealth and a Western mining giant fighting to protect its profits. So, it's no surprise that Barrick doesn't want to play by Mali's new rules. Complying with the new mining code would mean surrendering a bigger share of profits and control to the Malian government. But when Barrick refused to budge, Colonel Assimi Goita decided it was time to push back, and hard. In September 2024, the Malian authorities made a dramatic move. They arrested 4 senior executives from Barrick Gold and accused the Canadian mining giant of financial misconduct. According to Mali's government, Barrick Gold owes the country roughly $512 million in outstanding debts, mainly from unpaid taxes and dividends. Some Western media outlets were quick to jump to Barrick's defense, suggesting Mali had falsely accused the company to tighten its grip on the gold sector. But if those accusations were truly baseless, why did Barrick Gold reportedly offer to pay $370 million to settle the dispute? For many in Mali, it's not surprising to see the Western media rush to paint the Sahel's military leaders in a negative light. It's a narrative that's been repeated time and time again. But the arrests weren't the only weapon in Mali's arsenal. The authorities also issued an order restricting gold shipments out of the country. And they didn't stop there. Mali has now placed an interim freeze on the existing gold stock at Loulo-Gounkoto, bringing exports to a standstill and throwing Barrick's operations into chaos. The message from Bamako is clear. Mali wants control of its gold, and it's willing to fight for it. When the Malian government made its move, Barrick Gold CEO Mark Bristow didn't stay silent. He threatened to suspend all operations in Mali if the standoff wasn't resolved. Perhaps Bristow thought that threatening the authorities would force them to back down. In the past, with civilian governments, that tactic might have worked, but this time, things were different. Mali's military government refused to blink. Colonel Assimi Goita made it clear that he was serious about enforcing the new mining code, and he wasn't about to be intimidated. In response to Barrick Gold's threats, Mali's authorities escalated the fight even further. They seized 3 tons of gold from one of Barrick's mines near Kayes in western Mali. Late one Saturday, the gold was loaded onto planes and trucks and transported to the capital. This wasn't a sudden act of aggression. Back in January 2025, Mali's senior investigating judge, Boubacar Moussa Diarra, had already sent Barrick a clear warning. 3 tons of gold would be seized if the company didn't comply. Barrick Gold fired back. In a statement, the company announced that it had officially suspended its operations in Mali, despite the fact that the country hosts one of its biggest and most lucrative mines. The statement was blunt. Barrick confirmed that the Malian military regime had confiscated gold from its Loulo-Gounkoto mining complex and transported it to a custodial bank. The government, which had been blocking gold exports since December 2024, had obtained an interim attachment order from a judge, giving it legal grounds to seize the gold. Barrick concluded its message on a somber note. As a result, Barrick has regrettably initiated the temporary suspension of operations while it continues to work toward a resolution. But in the streets of Mali, many people saw something else. For the first time in decades, it was an African nation standing firm against a global mining giant and refusing to surrender its wealth without a fight. When Barrick talked about seeking a resolution, what they really meant was one thing: they were taking Mali to court. The Canadian mining giant filed a request for arbitration with the International Centre for Settlement of Investment Disputes, known as ICSID. They're challenging Mali's demand for a bigger share of mining revenues. But the big question remains: will this arbitration actually change anything? Will it force Mali to bow to Barrick's demands? On paper, Barrick may have the upper hand. International arbitration often favors large corporations with deep pockets and powerful legal teams. But even if Barrick wins, the victory could be hollow. The case could drag on for years. And when a decision finally comes, there's no guarantee Mali's military government will honor the ruling. Meanwhile, Mali hasn't stood still. Since Barrick suspended operations at the mine, the Malian government made a bold decision. They appointed a provisional administrator to take charge and restart mining operations. It was this provisional administrator who ordered the seizure of $117 million worth of gold from the Loulo-Gounkoto site to sell it and fund the mine's revival. And here's where things get even more dramatic. While drilling and fresh extraction haven't yet resumed, operations at the plant that processes ore into gold restarted on Monday. In other words, Barrick Gold is no longer running Mali's biggest gold mine. Mali is now operating it on its own. According to internal estimates reviewed by Reuters, it will take just 11 to 13 days from restarting the plant to produce the first new gold bars. So now, the world is watching. Because for the first time in a long time, an African nation has seized back control of its own resources, and the outcome could reshape the balance of power between Africa and the global mining giants who have ruled its soil for far too long. Isn't this, in many ways, a good development? Instead of continuing to depend on a foreign company to mine its gold, Mali has decided to take matters into its own hands, to control its resources and shape its own future. And Barrick Gold isn't the only foreign company caught up in disputes with Mali. Back in October 2023, the Malian authorities arrested 3 employees of Australian-based Resolute Mining, including its CEO, Terence Holohan. The executives spent over a week in custody until the company agreed to pay $80 million up front, with a promise to pay another $80 million in the months ahead. Meanwhile, Vancouver-based B2 Gold Corporation managed to avoid such drama. In September, they negotiated a new fiscal agreement with Mali without any of their executives facing arrest. Around the same time, Allied Gold Corporation also announced a new deal with the Malian government. These companies read the writing on the wall. They were smart enough to comply with Mali's demands so they could keep operating and continue profiting from Mali's rich mines. There's little doubt that they've accepted the new mining code and its terms. So the question hangs in the air: why can't Barrick Gold do the same? But guess what? Even as Mali pushes forward to secure a greater share of its own wealth, some Western media outlets have chosen to spin a different narrative, one that paints Mali's leaders in a dark and suspicious light. Take, for instance, a recent article in the Globe and Mail. The paper reported that Barrick Gold, the Toronto-based mining giant, has found itself in the crosshairs of Mali's military junta. According to the article, Mali's government, described as a regime that seized power in a 2021 coup and later aligned itself with Moscow, is stepping up efforts to assert control over the mining sector, with Barrick's prized Loulo-Gounkoto complex squarely in its sights. It's the kind of reporting that raises questions. Is it genuine concern about stability in West Africa? Or is it an attempt to protect Western interests threatened by a new wave of African sovereignty? According to the Globe and Mail, Mali's military government is now considering an even more dramatic move: the outright expropriation of the Loulo-Gounkoto mine, one of the world's largest gold-producing sites. It's part of a broader push by the junta to tighten its grip on every corner of the country. In recent months, they've suspended political activities and restricted media coverage of political organizations. But there's another layer to this story that makes it even more complex. Mali's growing ties with Russia have raised alarm bells far beyond its borders. Russian troops have reportedly been involved in seizing mining sites in Mali and neighboring countries, a development that has prompted accusations from the US government. Washington alleges that Moscow is using Africa's mining revenues to bankroll its global military operations. And the Globe and Mail's report goes even further. It warns that if Mali, with Moscow's support, takes full control of the Loulo-Gounkoto mine, it wouldn't be the first time Russia has ended up in de facto control of African mineral wealth. The article points to 2020, when Russian mercenaries linked to the Kremlin's Wagner Group seized an Axeman-owned mine in the Central African Republic. That mine, according to multiple reports, went on to become a crucial source of funding for Wagner's operations. So as Mali moves to take back control of its gold, a new question rises. Is this truly a fight for African sovereignty, or the opening chapter in another geopolitical power struggle playing out on African soil? What sort of nonsense article is this? How on earth do the actions of the Malian authorities automatically link back to Russia? As we've said before, the Western media always seems determined to cast the military leaders of the Sahel in the worst possible light. And what better way to do that than by tying every move they make to Russia? For the West, it seems, allying with Russia has become the ultimate sin. So now, because Russia has been providing some support to Mali's military, the authorities in Bamako are suddenly portrayed as villains, and every decision they make is painted as part of some sinister Russian agenda. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's as if the West can't bring itself to believe that Africans are capable of thinking for themselves or making choices in their own national interest. The Globe and Mail's article even claims that Russian troops have been seizing mining sites in Mali and neighboring countries. But where's the proof? Where's the hard evidence? It's shameful that a media house would publish such serious accusations without solid facts to back them up. This is exactly how the Western media operates. Just last year, reports flooded the headlines claiming that Mali planned to hand over one of its mines to Russia. But what actually happened? The mine in question wasn't even under government control. It was in the hands of the Tuareg rebels, an armed group that has been fueling violence across Mali for years. The rebels were using the mine's resources to fund their operations, threatening the country's stability. So when the Malian government moved to reclaim the mine, it wasn't about handing it to Russia, it was about taking back control from militants who were bleeding the country dry. Yet in the eyes of many Western outlets, every action taken by Mali's government somehow becomes another chapter in a Russian conspiracy. And that narrative, more often than not, has little to do with the truth on the ground. However, the story on the ground in Mali is far more complicated than the headlines suggest. With help from Russian mercenaries, Mali's military was able to secure the gold mining site and drive out the Tuareg rebels who had been controlling it. After reclaiming the territory, the Wagner Group provided security for a time, stabilizing the area. But ever since then, rumors have swirled. Countless reports have claimed that Mali's authorities plan to hand over the gold mining site previously explored by Barrick Gold to Russia. Yet so far, those claims remain just that, rumors without solid evidence. Adding fuel to the speculation, Mali signed a contract with Russia last year to build a gold refinery. The deal came in the form of a non-binding memorandum of understanding. Under the plan, Mali and Russia would collaborate to construct a refinery capable of processing 200 tons of gold per year. Olusegun Sanu, a minister in Mali's military government, explained the thinking behind the project. This will allow us not only to control all gold production, he said, but also to be able to correctly apply all taxes and duties. According to Sanu, the memorandum is valid for 4 years, though he didn't share a precise timeline for when construction might begin. If completed, the refinery would be the largest of its kind in Mali, and a major step toward keeping more of the country's wealth within its own borders. But for critics in the West, any cooperation with Russia sets off alarm bells, and so the narrative persists that Mali's push for economic sovereignty is just another piece in a grand geopolitical game. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. Now let's assume for a moment that the Western media is right in its claims. Even if Mali is working closely with Russia, here's the real question. How is that anyone else's business? Mali is a sovereign country, just like the United States, France, or Russia. And as a sovereign nation, Mali has the right to choose its own allies and make decisions it believes will benefit its people. This is a concept the West understands very well, especially the United States, which has never hesitated to make choices based on protecting its own national interests. No one questions America's right to pick its friends or pursue its own strategic goals. So why should it be any different for Mali? African countries belong to Africa. Their resources, their decisions, and their future should be theirs alone. And maybe it's time for the West to simply mind its own business. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.